Week 12 NFL so far, and I'm going to do Monday night's game, which will be Baltimore and the Chargers. I'll do it in the next day. But in the meantime, let's get through what we got so far, shall we? Cleveland beat Pittsburgh in the snow. Jameson Winston, I tell you, he might be one of the most entertaining under 500 quarterbacks I've ever seen in my life. He's so entertaining and engaging. You can't really have a knock against him, even though it's corny and it's funny, but it's down home. But he came to ball. And I'm gonna tell you something. There is the what if he had a start instead of Deshaun Watson argument going right now. Because he played out his mind. He looked good. Big win for Cleveland. Um, Very impressive. And a bad loss for Pittsburgh. Because then they had to go through both quarterbacks with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So big big win. Big, Cleveland got, as always, it always seems to be the same story. Next year, maybe be some promise. So, anyway, a bad loss for Pittsburgh. They needed that one. Tennessee beat Houston. Will Leavens has been playing better. Tennessee starts off pretty good in games and then just gives up. But once he got past he stunk the first part of the year. But he's been coming on strong. As for Houston and CJ Stroud, they're one of those teams that got a lot of promise and upside, and it looked like there was going to be something, but they have a attention deficit. They can't finish, and he throws too many bad picks. They look fundamentally young and fundamentally flawed. And what I mean by that, just not poised, make a lot of mistakes, and just seems to get outcoached and just make some bad, terrible interceptions. Just terrible. Should be better than what they are, and it's a disappointment because it's how they blew that game. They sacked Levi's 5 times, just like they had 5 turnovers against against Detroit, but blow these games back to back. How do you create so much uh, in your defense and then still lose? I mean, they just are frustrating. Minnesota beat Chicago, and interesting. I'm going to talk about Washington a little bit, but Chicago hasn't been the same since that loss to Washington. They played pretty well in this game. Sam Darnold was, they got over. But Caleb Williams played pretty good. But the Bears are just headed for another. If they're lucky to get 6 wins, that's what it looks like. Could have been a better season than it turned out. Their woes continue. And there is definitely a problem on that squad because they were in games and then they just fell off. Minnesota is 9-2, but a lot of people are looking at them kind of sheepy eyed because it is really 9-2 or the competition you play. Because the Vikings just somehow kind of leaves you kind of like, are you really 9-2 or what? They're one of the most puzzling teams that are out there. Dallas beat Washington, and to tell you something, if you're Washington, that game against Chicago, you haven't been the same since that. Losing close games, stuck with a Poochie who missed that extra point, and then they lose this game. If worst case scenario, you go into overtime, but then to have the game lost like that was a wild game. A lot of things happened in this game, and Washington ain't ready for the spotlight. That's what this game shows me again. Just like how they lost to Pittsburgh and how they lost to Baltimore. This is a game they should be they had every reason enough to be in this game big time, and they let Dallas pimp them and hustle them. So that's coaching, and that's youth. Daniels look pretty good in spots, but they're getting out coached. And so Washington's had a pretty good season. I think, they look like they're going to be a 500 team. That's why it's starting to come unravel right now. Miami spanked New England. Who can't spank New England right now? Tua looked like his old self. Waddle went off. Drake May looked like a young rookie. They got hammered. They got beat up. And New England, teams like New England is in the contention for a worse record. Them and Dallas and the Giants. And I can name the others. They just look flat. They got rolled up. They got rolled out. Kansas City beat Carolina. That game was pretty close. I will say this: Carolina, while they're one of the worst teams, they're not the scrubbiest of scrubs. They've been putting up a fight. Bryce Young, after getting benched for Andy Dalton, came back and showed some poise. They hit some plays. Mahomes hit some touchdown passes, but Kansas City's kind of been in cruise control. They're 10-1. Win games you're supposed to. Was a bit of a fight, but they had enough to finish. And Mahomes with 50 seconds is going to get the game winning. So they were able to pull it out. But Carolina is putting up a little bit of resistance. I mean, they might actually get to 6 wins. They're not the worst, So that we're going to get to the worst, Tampa Bay beat the Giants. It was so bad that Baker Mayfield did the Tommy DeVito dollar sign. That was hilarious. You're stuck with Rich Danny DeVito. Tommy, I know he's Tommy DeVito. I want to call him Danny DeVito because let's keep it real. And he's staying at home. Well, he gonna be at home because they're gonna have to go look for a quarterback. They suck, they stink, and I know they have to watch Saquon Barkley. And then they cut their quarterback, Daniel Jones, who should never been a starter to begin with. So the Giants are horrible and they suck. As for Tampa Bay, they won again they're supposed to. Baker Mayfield did enough, but let's not get excited about Baker Mayfield because he stunk up this year too. He's been average, and they really aren't that good, even with everybody healthy. So just saying. The best team in the NFL, Detroit Lions, spanked Indianapolis. The Colts couldn't do nothing by the goal line. I will get at about Detroit. Bend, don't break. They held them out the end zone, and that was really a turning point in the game. Jared Goff did enough, but it was the running game that sealed the deal, and the Lions are very feisty. 10-1. One of those teams that, I got them coming out the NFC. It's going to be hard to beat them. Dan Campbell's done a heck of a job. You got to get that man his due. I mean, that Barry Sanders and Billy Sims would be so proud. This is very impressive team, the way they hold their own. And they beat teams down they supposed to. They don't play around. Denver beat Las Vegas. The Bo Nixon era is looking to shape up. Sean Payton's got them playing better. Minshew for the Raiders did a couple of things, but the Broncos were in charge of the game. The Raiders play okay for like a half. Teams like the Raiders, the Giants, New England, Dallas, the teams like that, Cleveland, Tennessee, they all playing for a high-ranking pick. So the Raiders might not win another game. So don't be surprised if they start in the tank mode. They play okay for a half and they fall off. Elsewhere, Seattle beat Arizona. This was probably the surprise, not because Seattle beat them, but the defense they put on Kyler Murray. No one had been able to contain Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray, like he was an MVP consideration. Very impressive by the Seahawks. That was like a throwback to the way the Seahawks were during their Legion of Boom era. So they're in the contention to probably maybe pull that division off. They're tied, so they got a chance. That division is wide open, even though those teams are all mediocre. Let's not get twisted. It's not exactly a division that you're going to get excited about and think someone's going to sneak you. Not no more. But that was impressive why they did it. Green Bay spanked San Francisco. What do you expect? San Francisco's down to their fifth string quarterback almost, without Purdy. And then everything. They've had a lot of injuries, but I blame some of it on Kyle Shanahan's coaching. If you can't finish up games, just like you don't finish up those Super Bowls, it's continued a pattern that they have lost games. They've been sloppy, but they've also just not been able to finish games. But they were never in this game. Jordan Love was poised, finished the game. And I'm going to tell you something. If Jordan Love can play like this, the way he caught on at the end of last year, they could be a problem in the playoffs. They could be a team that if they don't have to deal with Detroit or Philly at the same time, if they can avoid one or the other, they could be a problem because something like that could happen. So keep your eye on the Packers. But the 49ers, they probably ain't even going to make the playoffs. They're not that good right now. But a lot of it's because of sloppiness on that. They didn't even come off really that good when Purdy was playing. They just now getting everybody kind of back, or some of it back. But the problem with them is just they just haven't. Kyle Shanahan's they lost a lot of close games too. But they got blew out this game. It wasn't even close. And of course, last night, Philly spanked the Rams. Saquon Barkley is running like he just got out of prison. I mean, he is the Giants were like in a lockup. I mean, and I always said about Derrick Henry too, but Saquon went off last night. Very impressive. Put 266. That's like some O.J. Simpson type numbers that he put up. Jalen Hurts looked poised. A.J. Brown. The Rams are a good offense. Their defense ain't really there. And it was really a one-sided game. The Eagles are starting to find their groove. Saquon was in the groove. They're starting to find their groove. And I tell you something, play like this, if they don't have to worry about Detroit right away, this is easily the second best team in the NFC. People are sleeping. And they got their mojo back. So we're gonna see. But so far, that's week 12 so far. Tell me how your team did. The Bills were off this week, so I didn't rock the Bills. Hadn't had to say anything about that. There were teams that were off this week. But with the games coming up on Thursday, I will probably talk about those games. Got a few games coming up. But in some of them I don't even want to talk about. But anyway, let me know how your team did. Please like, subscribe, welcome thoughts, comments, and I do respond. Thank you. Wash your hands. Keep your mind clear. Watch out for another Share the video if you like and hit that membership. Stay safe, stay blessed, stay woke, stay real. I'm out one time. Peace.